My son slapped me in my own living room, and then told everyone I was confused, slipping, and not safe to be alone. They didn't realize the house they stood in, the cars they drove, the cards they swiped. All of it still lived quietly under my signature. By the time they finally understood who truly held every key to their life, it was already far too late. Before I go on, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe, and maybe tell me where you're listening from. I share these stories the way an old friend might, slowly, honestly, with a little more truth than comfort. Your support, it means more to an old man than you might ever realize. I woke before dawn, the way I always did. Old habits don't fade. They just get quieter with age. I shuffled into the kitchen, brewed a small pot of coffee, and stood by the window while the steam warmed my face. The world outside was still dark, but the kind of dark that hinted at morning rather than night. A calm dark. A trustworthy dark. These early hours were mine. No noise, no demands. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator, the slow rhythm of my breathing, and the familiar ache in my knees reminding me I was still alive. I moved through the house with the slow caution of a man who'd learned to respect his own bones. I straightened a picture frame, folded a blanket, picked up a mug my granddaughter left out last week. Little things. Quiet things. The kinds of chores that used to go unnoticed when the house was full of life. Back when Mason was small, mornings felt different. The house would thump with his footsteps before sunrise. He'd run into the kitchen dragging his toy truck and climb onto my lap while I tried to drink my coffee. "Daddy, today I'm going to build something huge," he'd say, eyes shining. And I'd laugh, every time, and reply, "Then I'll help you make it strong." Funny how the years turn those simple promises into entire lives. I had worked long days, longer nights, and harder years than I care to admit to build this place, this estate that became the center of our family. Every board, every stone, every repaired leak or midnight emergency. I carried them all because that's what fathers did. We built, we repaired, we provided. And honestly, I never felt burdened by it. Just proud. Proud of the life I made. Proud of the man my son was becoming. Proud that everything around us came from sweat, sacrifice, and stubborn hope. Even after my lungs weakened and my energy slipped away in uneven breaths, I still tried to keep my share of the load. A little slower, a little shakier, but present. Always present. I liked the simple routines, watering the plants, sorting mail, fixing small things around the house. Those rituals kept me connected to the life I had built. That morning, as I sat in my worn armchair with my cup warming my hands, I felt a rare kind of peace settle around me. Not excitement, not joy. Just a quiet, steady peace that covered everything like a soft blanket. And for a moment, I believed it would last. But peace rarely announces when it's about to end. It slips out the back door quietly, taking warmth with it, leaving the air just a little too still. I didn't know it then, but that silence was the last real calm I would feel for a long time. The first sign came quietly, so quietly I almost ignored it. I was sitting in the living room, trying to catch my breath after a short walk from the driveway. My lungs had been unpredictable lately, but I managed. I always managed. Mason walked in with Brielle close behind him. Their footsteps were too deliberate, too synchronized, like they'd practiced the conversation before entering. "Dad," Mason said, forcing a calm he didn't feel, "we need to talk about your health." Brielle folded her arms, leaning on the doorframe like a referee waiting to blow the whistle. I straightened slowly. "What about it?" Mason took a breath, long, dramatic. "You've been forgetting things." I blinked. "Like what?" He hesitated, eyes darting to Brielle. She nodded, encouraging him. "You left the stove on last week," he said. I frowned. "That was you, Mason. You were heating leftovers." He ignored that. "Dad, it's becoming unsafe for you to be alone." There it was. The shift, the angle, the quiet insult wrapped in concern. I felt something inside me tighten. Not anger, not yet, just discomfort. The kind you feel when you realize the ground beneath you isn't solid anymore. "I'm doing fine," I said softly. A bit slower, but fine. Brielle stepped forward. "You're not fine, and honestly, it's irresponsible not to accept help." Her tone wasn't caring. It was rehearsed, polished, prepared for an audience. My chest tightened, not from illness, but from the unmistakable sting of being spoken to like a problem, not a person. "We're thinking," Mason continued carefully, "that it might be time for you to step back. Let us handle things." I looked at him, really looked at him. The nervous twitch in his jaw, the way he avoided my eyes, the way Brielle's hand rested on his arm like she was steering him. Something wasn't right. "What things?" I asked. He hesitated again. "The estate, the accounts, the decisions, all of it. You're just not as sharp as you used to be." My breath caught. Not because the words were cruel, because he believed them. I opened my mouth to respond, but he pressed on. "And Dad, about the house, we think it's better if you move into the guest quarters for now, just until we can figure out next steps." Brielle added, "It's safer, and honestly, more appropriate." More appropriate. The phrase hit harder than any insult. It was the kind of comment people made when they'd already decided who you were going to be from now on. I sat there quietly, hands resting on the armchair, trying to steady my breathing. "My home," I said slowly, "is this house." Mason shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, don't make this difficult." I almost laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. Difficult? I had built this life, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice, and now standing in front of me was a son who saw me not as a man, but as a burden to rearrange. Then Brielle said the sentence that pulled everything into sharp, painful focus. "We just want what's best for the property. Not for you. Not for our family. Not for your health. For the property." My fingers tightened around the armrests. That was the moment, the exact moment. I understood what this conversation was really about. Not safety. Not concern. Control. Mason stepped closer. "Dad, you need to trust us. You're confused. Confused." A simple word, a devastating one. Something inside me went still. Not broken, still. Like a pond before a storm. I looked up at him with a calm I didn't feel. "No," I whispered. "I'm not confused." He didn't hear me. Or he chose not to. Instead, he reached for my arm to lift me from the chair. Too quickly, too firmly. My breath caught. Pain shot up my shoulder. And then it happened. A quick, sharp slap of his hand against mine when I tried to pull away. Light, but disrespect has never needed force to hurt. The room blurred for a moment, not from weakness, from realization. This wasn't my son trying to help. This was a man who believed he'd already taken ownership of a life still under my feet. And as he stood there, breathing hard, trying to steady his expression, I felt something inside me shift. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. But something in me went very, very quiet. A silence born not of defeat, but awakening. A silence that whispered, "That's enough." That was the moment I knew. I would not stay silent. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a moment. I lay in the small guest house behind the main estate, lights off, staring into the dark while the quiet pressed against my chest. My breathing came shallow, uneven, stubborn, each inhale scraping like sandpaper, each exhale shaking with emotions I wasn't ready to name. I wasn't replaying the slap, or the smoke they blew in my face, or even the laughter afterward. What haunted me was the look, that quick, cold flash in my son's eyes, the moment he decided I was no longer someone to respect, only someone to manage. The shift from dad to burden. People imagine heartbreak as something loud. But this heartbreak was quiet. It slipped inside my chest and settled there without asking permission. Around midnight, I walked to the kitchen for water. My hand trembled as I lifted the glass. Not from age I understood, but from honesty. For the first time, I admitted a truth I had been avoiding. My son didn't see me anymore. Not the man who raised him. Not the man who built his world. Not the father who worked until his bones ached so his child never had to. He saw a signature, a key, a problem to be solved quietly. The silence in the house had changed. It used to feel peaceful, gentle, trustworthy. Now it felt tense, hollow like the air before a storm. I moved to my old armchair and lowered myself slowly into it. The cushions sagged the way it always had, formed to my back over the years, once comforting, now strangely foreign. My fingers traced the worn fabric, following grooves I had never noticed. It's strange how you can live somewhere for decades and suddenly see it differently when your heart shifts. I closed my eyes and let memories rise, not because I wanted them, but because grief doesn't ask permission. I remembered the day I bought this land, Mason was 10, sprinting across the empty field, shouting, "Dad, is this really ours?" When I nodded, he wrapped his arms around my waist. "I'm gonna live here forever." I believed him. Fathers always believe. We hold on to promises far longer than our children intend to keep them. Later years came back to me in pieces. The wooden toys he carved, the school projects we built at the kitchen table, the nights I worked late but still tiptoed into his room to make sure he was asleep. All of it flooded back, each memory tapping lightly against a heart that suddenly felt too thin. A soft rain began outside. The sound was steady, patient, almost tender. But the house felt colder than it ever had. I pressed a hand over my chest, feeling the familiar tightness. Not fear, weariness. There's a particular loneliness that follows betrayal. A loneliness that doesn't shout, but sinks, slow, heavy, deliberate. I whispered his name once, softly. Not in anger, in disbelief. Mason. The room swallowed the sound. Hours passed. I didn't move. The rain blurred the windows, the night thinned, and the clock chimed 3. Still, I sat there, breathing carefully, like each breath was borrowed, and then something shifted inside me. Not loudly, not suddenly. Just a small, steady realization. They think I'm weak. They think I'm fading. They think they can decide my future without me. I let those thoughts settle. We took our time together. Because grief speaks first. But after grief comes clarity. And clarity, in an old man, is a dangerous thing. I stood up slowly, moved to the small table where I kept my old paperwork. Notes, keys, documents. I didn't open anything yet. I just stood there, thinking. Really thinking. The kind of thinking you only do when you've finally accepted the truth. Love blinds us. But betrayal makes everything clear. And now I saw it all clearly. Respect isn't given to the gentle. Respect is claimed by the steady, the patient, the quiet. The rain softened. My breathing evened. Not because the hurt was gone, but because something sturdier had taken its place. Resolve. I pulled out a chair, sat down, folded my hands, and let the night settle around me like a quiet promise. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I simply began to think, very carefully. Because if they truly believed I was confused, they would soon learn how wrong they were. If you're still listening, thank you. Stories like this remind me, patience isn't weakness, it's quiet strength. I didn't begin planning out of anger. Anger burns too fast. What I felt was steadier, a quiet, controlled focus that settled in my chest like a second heartbeat. That night in the guest house, something inside me had shifted. Not violently, just decisively. The way a storm decides its direction without making a sound. I sat at my small writing desk and opened the drawer where I kept my old papers. Not the sentimental ones, those belonged to softer years. This drawer held the things that mattered now. Trust agreements, deeds, authorizations, contracts, legal notes, and one packet I hadn't touched in years. As I sorted through the documents, the truth unfolded line by line. They had no idea how this estate truly worked, no idea who controlled the foundation, no idea how many safeguards I'd built long before they ever lifted a hand to help. Mason thought everything had already shifted into his grasp. He assumed my slow walk meant a slow mind. He assumed age meant surrender. But when you spend a lifetime building something, you don't forget where the beams are, or which ones you can quietly remove. I stacked the documents neatly and breathed slowly, letting my thoughts settle into order. Revenge, real revenge, has to move like a craftsman's hand, steady, deliberate, precise. The first step was simple. I called Laura, my attorney of 25 years. Sharp mind, steady loyalty, and a voice that never rushed. She answered on the second ring. "Elliot? It's late. Are you all right?" I hesitated, not from uncertainty, but from the weight of saying the truth out loud. "No," I said quietly. "I think it's time for some adjustments." She didn't pry. She never had to. "Come in tomorrow," she said. "Early, before the office opens." "Yes," I whispered. "That would be good." After hanging up, I rested the phone beside the documents. My hands trembled a little, not with fear, but with the gravity of what I was preparing to do. I picked up the trust papers next. I read them slowly, the way an old man reads the weather, not for the clouds, but for the warnings. And then I saw it. Section 14B. A clause I added years ago after watching a friend lose everything to a greedy nephew. It allowed for the immediate removal of any beneficiary who was abusive, negligent, or demonstrated behavior detrimental to the well-being of the founding trustee. A younger me had drafted those words with caution. An older me now read them with clarity. They had written the evidence themselves, carelessly, boldly, publicly. I traced the clause with my fingertip, feeling the weight of every word sink into place. Behavior detrimental to the well-being of the founding trustee. Their own actions had completed the sentence. The next morning, I drove myself to Laura's office, slowly, carefully, but with purpose that settled deeper with every mile. She greeted me with warm eyes and a stack of blank forms waiting on her desk. "Tell me what happened," she said softly. I did. Not every detail. Some wounds were still too raw, but enough. The disrespect, the humiliation, the slap, the accusation of confusion, the smoke deliberately blown into my face, knowing my lungs fought for every breath. Her jaw tightened, just a fraction, professional, but human. "Do you want to proceed with removal?" she asked. "Yes." "And the asset freeze?" "Yes." "And activation of the safeguarding measures?" I inhaled slowly, letting the decision settle.
"Yes."
For the next several hours, we worked through documents, reviewing clauses, signing forms, recording statements, setting timestamps, and filing motions that would quietly rearrange the entire power structure of my estate. No dramatics, no bursts of emotion, just quiet precision. By noon, Laura leaned back and exhaled. "It's all in motion," she said. "By Monday, they'll be removed from every line of authority and access." A long, slow breath left my chest. Not relief exactly, but release. Before I left, she rested her hand on mine. "You're not confused, Elliot," she said softly. "You're protecting yourself, and you're doing it wisely." Her words settled into me like something warm and sturdy, a reminder that clarity is not cruelty. When I returned home, the house looked the same as always, but I didn't feel the same walking through it. The quiet no longer hurt, it simply waited. Late in the afternoon, I walked down to the lake, my refuge for as long as I could remember. The water shimmered, brushing gently against the shore. And as I stood there, I understood something with absolute certainty. When my son said I was confused, he forgot who built his entire life. Every paper was signed now, every safeguard activated, every beam positioned exactly where it needed to be. The stage was set. All I had to do was wait. I didn't warn them. I didn't hint or gesture or speak in riddles the way people in movies do. No, I simply lived my quiet mornings, took my slow walks, and let them believe whatever made them comfortable. Let them underestimate me. Let them misread silence as weakness. Revenge works best when the other person walks straight into it, certain nothing can touch them. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday. I was sitting on the back porch sipping tea the way an old man does when his lungs feel tight, but his patience still holds. Mason came striding across the yard, phone in hand, frustration wrapped across his face like a mask he couldn't peel off. "Dad," he called out, trying hard to sound calm. "There's an issue with the accounts." I looked up slowly. "Oh, the cards aren't working," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "And I can't access the trust dashboard. I'm sure it's a glitch, but..." I nodded with a soft, patient blink. Technology can be tricky." He studied me, eyes scanning every wrinkle as if searching for confusion, fear, some sign that I was slipping the way he claimed. I gave him nothing. Just quiet. Just calm. He muttered something under his breath and walked away, irritated. I took another sip of my tea and felt something warm settle inside me. Not joy, not triumph. Peace. Real peace. The next day, Brielle cracked. She stormed into the living room, hair wild, voice sharp, her footsteps too loud for a house built on respect. "Elliot, did you change something with the accounts? Everything says restricted access. Why is that happening?" I lifted my eyes from the newspaper. "I don't handle those anymore," I said gently. "You both insisted it was easier if I stayed out of it." Her expression faltered, just enough to reveal fear beneath the control. "And why," she pushed, "is security requesting new authorization forms? They said something about beneficiary status review. What does that mean?" I folded the paper slowly, neatly, the way a man folds a chapter he's finally finished reading. It means someone is reviewing beneficiary status. I offered nothing else. Silence did the rest. By Thursday, their world was unraveling fast. Every foundation account was frozen to them. Every credit card declined. Every admin password revoked. Even the estate manager, who once catered to Mason's every whim, now answered only to me. Mason tried entering the office he had taken over. His key card failed. He tried again, harder, more desperate. Still nothing. He knocked. Once, twice. Then harder. The estate manager opened the door with calm professionalism. "Mr. Granger," he said, "your access code is no longer valid." "What? Why?" Mason snapped. "A directive was filed Monday morning," he said, handing Mason a sealed envelope. "By the founding trustee. My name, my authority, my decision." Mason tore open the envelope. His eyes ran over the page, and the color drained from his face. "You removed me," he whispered. "I adjusted the structure," I replied softly, stepping into the hallway. He turned toward me, disbelief stretching across his expression. "You did this?" "Yes," I said. "Section 14B. The clause you never bothered to read." His voice cracked. "What evidence? What did we even do?" I exhaled slowly. "The night you slapped my hand. The night you told everyone I was confused. The night Brielle blew smoke into my face, knowing my lungs fight for every breath." Brielle scoffed behind him. "Oh, please, that wasn't abuse." The estate manager stepped aside. 2 private security officers entered. Not aggressive, not loud, just present, just prepared. Mason's voice wavered. "Dad, what is this? What are you doing?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't glare or accuse. Instead, I spoke with the calm of a man who'd finally stopped pretending. "This is me reclaiming the life I built," I said, "and removing the people who forgot whose name holds every deed." He swallowed hard. "Where are we supposed to go?" I let the question hang in the air. Some questions shape themselves into answers without help. "This isn't cruelty," I said quietly. "It's correction." The officers approached, gentle, steady, offering space but not negotiation. Brielle stepped back, panic rising. "You can't do this. We live here." "Not anymore," I said. The fear in her eyes was real now, not anger, fear. The fear of someone who finally understands the ground beneath them wasn't theirs. "You said I was confused," I reminded them softly. "You said I couldn't make decisions anymore." I stepped closer, slow, deliberate. But I have never been clearer in my life. The room stilled, the air shifted. They were escorted out. No shouting, no spectacle, no theatrics. Just a quiet, irreversible ending. When the door shut behind them, the house breathed. And so did I. For the first time in years, the silence didn't hurt. It felt earned, steady and mine. And in that silence, I finally felt free. The house was quiet after they left. Not empty. Just quiet in a way I hadn't felt in years. A quiet that didn't judge or press or suffocate, but rested around me like a soft blanket finally returned to its rightful place. I walked through the room slowly, letting my hand trail across door frames, tables, and the backs of chairs. Things I had built, things I had fixed. Things I had paid for with long days and tired bones. For once, I didn't see betrayal when I looked at them. I saw beginnings. Little shoes by the front door. School backpacks tossed carelessly on the sofa. Late nights helping Mason glue pieces of cardboard into something he called a rocket. A tiny voice once shouting, "Daddy, hurry, come see!" Funny how love settles over a home, like dust in warm light, quiet, unnoticed, until the moment you stand alone with it. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea warming my hands. The steam curled gently upward, soft and forgiving. And for the first time since everything happened, I understood something with a kind of clarity only age can give. My revenge had never been about punishing them. It had been about reclaiming the ground beneath my feet, ground I had stood on for decades without realizing I was slowly being pushed off it. I wasn't confused. I wasn't fading. I wasn't the fragile old man they tried to tuck into a corner of the life I built. I was still me, a little slower, a little quieter, but steady where it mattered. When my son said I was confused, he forgot who built his entire life, brick by brick, breath by breath, year by year. He forgot the man who held the roof above him long before he could understand its weight. And strangely, putting distance between us brought me closer to myself than I had been in a long time. The next morning, I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and sat by the lake. The water barely moved. The world felt honest again, stripped of noise, intentions, and expectations. I didn't hate them. Hate takes energy I no longer wish to spend. Anger exhausts the spirit, and mine has carried enough weight to know better. Instead, I wish them clarity. Growth. The kind of reflection that eventually touches every life, whether welcomed or not. Maybe one day they will see the truth of their actions. Maybe not. But peace is not something others hand you. Peace is something you claim when you finally recognize your own worth and refuse to let anyone rewrite it. Respect, once lost, can be reclaimed if you wait for the right moment. And as the morning light warmed the water's edge, I felt something inside me loosen, a quiet release, a gentle breath. For the first time in a long time, I felt free enough to breathe again. If this story spoke to you, tell me, would you have done the same? And if you'd like to hear more stories from an old voice like mine, go ahead and subscribe.